Today is episode 2 of the Learneezee cast with Pat and Rico. Okay. And Rico is here to do a little catch up with me so we can, compare notes on how we're surviving this quarantine. Yeah. I want to do a little comparison of how life is in Denver, Colorado, in the U.S. to Freiburg. So Rico, tell me, like, what are you doing to survive right now in Denver? What's going on? Are things getting better or worse in the area?
Well, hey Pat, how
Yeah,
are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Surviving here in
I
Freiburg.
think I think it's a little bit hard to tell. We had a stay-at-home order that was put into place in April. It was extended, and it's actually ending tonight, Friday, May 8th at midnight here in the United States Mountain Standard Time.
Oh wow.
So it remains to be seen. But ultimately, people will be able to return to doing some activities that they couldn't do previously. Some retailers will be able to open up, and they're sort of like phasing this in. So it's really hard to tell what the exact difference is going to be. I'm still a little bit hesitant to just sort of meet up with friends and get back to normal without really knowing what's going on, because unfortunately,
Yeah.
like in many countries in Europe, our number of cases seems to be going up still.
Oh wow.
The number of deaths, 2,000 deaths a day in the United States due to coronavirus. So it's still a very, I guess for me, a very difficult situation to know what to do.
Understood, Rico. It sounds a little bit more dire than here in Freiburg at the moment. We've been kind of relaxed here in the sense that this has been a um, very clear order to stay at home, but you could still go out, take walks with your significant other or immediate family. And if you were to meet another family or another individual, you would have to keep a distance of 1.5 meters, if you can understand that. That's like 5
Well,
feet.
they've been saying 6 feet is what people want us to do in the United States. Six
E-
feet of social distancing.
Exactly, and that would be about 2 meters in the metric system, but 1.5 is what is the minimum that's required here in Germany. 2 meters would be better. Yeah, the 6 feet would be better, but 1.5 is okay, which is a little bit like uh, fascinating how arbitrary some of these rules are that we're following. We just follow them without really knowing if how effective it is. It's just good enough, and it's just a way of giving you a uh, way of thinking about how to deal with the strangers that you encounter. And as long as you keep some distance, it's okay. And of course, it's not so strict here in that sense. If you have a group that's meeting together, you could, uh, as long as it's not a group of 5 or more. Here in Freiburg, in Freiburg and in Baden-Württemberg in general, the rules are a little bit more relaxed in that sense. But if they see a group of more than 5 meeting and not keeping the distance between one another, then the police would get involved, and then they would probably fine you. You would get a fine. Do you have that kind of situation in Denver where you'd get fined or maybe even arrested for breaking the quarantine in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any personal knowledge of this, based on my own experiences or what I've seen, but I have read that people are getting fined, or could risk even being arrested if they don't adhere to some of these orders. But when I've gone out to get groceries at the supermarket,
Yeah,
it's been amazing to me the number of people who don't have masks on,
yeah,
the number of people who just seem to think this is just not a big deal. But I've really only gone to the supermarkets, although my wife and I have gone on some walks and have recently started riding our bicycles on a trail where there have been very few people that we see at all. So we're just trying to be smart. But things are going to change starting this weekend. And so my point is that when I've been out just to the grocery store or running other smaller errands, like getting gas, there's still a lot of traffic out there. There's still a lot of it's hard to really think that there's actually something happening because you see so many people out and about.
Understood. If you see so many people out and about, do you feel a little bit nervous? Because I get that feeling sometimes here when we're going out for hikes behind where my girlfriend and I live to the mountains. We try to keep our distance from other strangers, but still, you see groups of teenagers meeting and gathering, and you're just wondering, "Oh, how is that going to help the situation if people are
Yeah,
kind of
and I think
finding
that's
ways to
just it.
break
I
the
think that
rules?"
people are well. I think people are social and they're going to flout the rules. They're going to do what they want to do. And I think that in the United States, especially, you see people who are just have refused to put on masks. You see people have been shot in restaurants when told that they can't sit down in the restaurant or challenging people, employees. And
Exactly.
the United States is very different, as you know, Patrick, from Europe and specifically Germany.
Yes.
Um, but I think that ultimately people just are not taking this seriously because it hasn't affected every family in some way. The numbers aren't that large yet,
Yes.
and I just hope that people can understand that by practicing social distancing and adhering to recommendations like wearing a mask and
Yeah.
not meeting with people who are not in your family, for as long as you can, stay at home is really the recommended suggestion. I think that's really all we can do until there's a vaccine, is kind of what I understand. I don't want to get too political
Yeah.
in this discussion, but I think that the reality is, I was just doing some reading up on the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
and I think there were 500,000 to 750,000 deaths to the Spanish flu in
Mhm.
the United States
Yeah. Yeah.
specifically.
Yes.
And last I checked, we're nearing 80,000 deaths in the United States with COVID
Yeah.
19, and that's been 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
The Spanish flu lasted from the spring of 1918 through the summer fall of 1919. So
Yeah.
in about 15, 16, 17 months, let's say, you had 500,000 to 750,000 deaths. And in 2 months, we've had 80,000 deaths. I don't know how those numbers are that different given that the time frames are different. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
that.
understand. I would say that uh, with the Spanish flu, from the videos I've seen online, we should link to a couple of good videos that I've seen. It made it clear that there were two waves, and so there was a lack of preparedness for the second wave that caused even more deaths. And then they required another quarantine, even stricter quarantine, in order to get it under control. And this is something that we're aware of, but we're not necessarily preparing for based on, like you said, I would not like to get political. I live in Germany, and I know the German government is well prepared. Uh, but I feel from what I've seen, the U.S. government has not really taken this into account, except for leadership, the scientific leadership. But the scientific leadership is not the one controlling the policy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just it. It's like, I forget what the expression is,
Yeah.
you know, you know, uh, something like if I make a mistake, it's my mistake, but shame on, my mistake, shame on me, or I forget what it is, but
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like you fooled me once, yeah, right.
yes.
Shame on me. Fool me twice, yeah, or shame on you. I don't know. I don't know. It's
Yeah, we'll,
something
we'll
like
put it
that.
into the next episode. We'll,
Yeah,
we'll look
exactly.
that
We'll
up
get it right for the next
for
episode. Yeah, yeah. But the idea
but
is, you, it's about being fooled, right? And I feel like we're fooling ourselves if we think that there won't be a second wave, and that's what we should
and
learn from the
and to
Spanish.
not be prepared. Okay,
Yeah,
let's just admit we weren't prepared for this first wave. So let's
that's true.
just let's learn from that. Not only with this possible second wave, but any future pandemic. Have we really learned our lesson that
Okay.
there is a need to have emergency pandemic preparedness? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the United States, which is a federal republic, so every state is doing what he or she wants to do. There's not a concerted effort at the federal government level
Hmm.
with scientists and policymakers, lawmakers, and so on and so forth. So that is what the problem is in the United States, I think. And ultimately, you know, in an election year, there's a lot that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how the next 180 days play out, because our election this year is coming up in 180 days
Isn't
today.
that crazy? It's coming so quickly. Yeah, I wanted to state this. In Germany, we have a federal system as well, and the leadership is strong enough where they were able to sit at the table with all the governors or the heads of state for each state in Germany. We only have 16 states here, so it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more uh, convenient to come up with a plan. But of course, there had to be negotiations because the leadership here, and we're speaking about Angela Merkel, she's very experienced and she's very knowledgeable, but she understands that she has to come up with a solution that will satisfy the more conservative wing of the governors of those states, and also respect the wishes of the liberal governors of different states. So it's a balancing act that requires experience and leadership, and it was something that required her to be able to come up with a compromise between the states, but she couldn't dictate to them what to do. And that's what I think you're trying to allude to, is this lack of someone with the political skill to negotiate, you know, a plan that will work for the whole country, knowing that you have to respect the states' rights to have their own plans, you know. And we don't
Exactly, and
have
I
that
think
in the
that
U.S. Yeah.
unfortunately, the United States, and just to end on this note, but just that I think our country is very divided politically, and as a result, there has been no effort, no concerted effort to try to bring people together and get past this. It's still been a lot of uh, finger pointing and blaming, and ultimately, I think comes down to President Trump not wanting to assume any responsibility, or to say, hey, the buck stops here. We made a mistake. Let's come together and move forward, so
Yeah.
that I can ultimately, you would think he would want to think, you would think that he would be thinking to himself, like, if I can demonstrate that I can pull this country together,
Yeah.
that I'll get reelected for the next 4 years. So it's an interesting conversation, but we can move past the politics, Pat. It's a Friday.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm not pro Trump at all, and I'm not against seeing alternatives to the system there in the US. I think I'm kind of lucky. So I'll leave it at that. That we'll talk more about the system and political issues for the students who need that kind of information next time. But what about what are you doing, Rico, to survive this quarantine? Because look, I have this loosened quarantine here. I don't even have time to really check out, things like television. Really, I don't get a chance. I'm working still. I'm still going and spending time with the family, going out. But you're stuck in the house. So what are you doing for fun?
Yeah, well, for me, I'm a self-professed sports fan.
Okay.
I love sports. I love to watch sports, and so I've been trying to watch a little bit of sports. But unfortunately, as you know, in
Yeah.
the United States specifically, all of our professional sports leagues have been postponed or put on hiatus. But ESPN recently started showing The Last Dance, a
I've heard
documentary
of it.
series
Yes.
on
Yes.
Michael Jordan's last season, and his last championship season, I should say, with the Chicago Bulls. And it's been, I think that's probably been the number one reason, in my opinion, why
Yeah.
people have been so unwilling to just stay at home, is because there's a lack of sports. There's a lack of escapism.
Okay.
Even without fans, I think people would be contented to stay at home and watch baseball, watch basketball, watch football.
Yes.
And what I'm actually hearing in Germany that you guys are going to be opening up the Bundesliga.
Yeah, that's crazy when you think about it, but it's true. The news was very clear that the Bundesliga will be having games soon, maybe even the beginning of next week. We'll start having games, but of course not with a full audience, or it'll be basically a televised game with a very small amount of people allowed to go and participate as an audience. And hopefully they'll be doing all the precautions of testing the players beforehand, and of course the audience that are going to watch the players. I think it's amazing that we've gotten to that point where now the German government thinks that it's okay to allow sports to happen, but I think they're trying to get people a little bit of a distraction, especially because in Germany, football is king. Soccer. I should say soccer is king. I'm looking forward to seeing how the players are able to deal with that kind of situation, and if
Well,
if it lasts. Yeah.
well, one of the interesting ideas that I heard or read about was that by not having fans or as many fans in attendance, it kind of somewhat evens the playing field of not having home field advantage. It's sort of just like, okay, it's just all about athletic ability. And how is the ebb and flow of the game going to go now when you don't have these raging fans cheering and the hooliganism
Yeah.
and all of that sort of paradigm that you have normally in team sports. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's pretty interesting. And I think I'm actually happy that, Germany's been a world leader in how to contain this virus and how to do social distancing in a way that, testing and just really trying to figure out how to get back to normalcy.
Yeah.
And so hopefully this can provide a blueprint for American sports leagues to somewhat know what to do, maybe what not to do. I've heard other leagues around the world as well. Like I think the Korean baseball league is
Yeah.
open up as well. So,
Yeah.
for countries that did have a more concerted and centralized approach,
Yeah.
I think they're starting to reap the benefits and rewards for having a plan, even if they as well were caught unprepared.
And that at that point, I think we can say, we can like put a bow on this little episode to say, yep, it's all about having a good plan and sticking to it, and then you can flatten that curve, and then hopefully return to some kind of normalcy. Yeah, okay, and I will come up with more, to talk about for the next episode of the Learneezee cast. I just want to let the listeners and the viewers know that we're looking to create more episodes more tailored to what you guys want to talk about, more inspiring and positive topics that we can use to learn more about how to improve our lives. And just, send us an email or leave us a comment on Instagram or even Facebook or even Twitter. We'll have all those links for you, and we'll look forward to taking those topics and using them for the next few episodes. But just to give you guys a teaser for the next time we have an episode, we'll be looking to talk about the English language. And since Rika and I were both, or we're still kind of still teachers in a way, we're always teaching, and learning from each other. But we're going to focus on the topic of English, and we'll be talking about things almost as if we'll have regular topic segments about the English language, like words of the week. We'll even try to put in a couple of jokes of the week in English, and also give you tips on how to improve, your grammar. And that will be something we'll try to keep for all types of topics, not just English, but maybe even languages like German and Italian. Maybe we'll have guests who will give us those tips. And that will be something you can look forward to in the next episodes outside of your own suggestions. Anything else, Rico, before we say goodbye?
No, well, I would just say that, I would encourage anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching the video to think about, these topics, because you can actually engage with a one-on-one session so that you can really enhance your skills in English, right? It's one thing
Yeah.
to do this in your native language, but to be able to get the practice and the repetitions to do this in a foreign language, in this case, English, for
Yeah.
those of you learning English, it's a really, really fun and engaging way to practice your language skills that can be personalized around whatever topic is of most interest to you. So please let us know
Yeah.
what it is that you want to have us talk about so that you are more engaged in listening to these podcasts.
All right, great. So we'll stop here, and I want to just say to the audience, keep learning easy, and we'll see you next time.